My name's Dave Poulson. I teach in the School of Journalism. I work in a Center for Environmental Journalism, which does exactly what it sounds like. We teach graduate students, undergraduate students how to better report about the environmental variety of media platforms. We do an awful lot of outreach work in terms of training professional journalists in the United States and abroad. And lately, where a lot of our work has been focused on is working with scientists and researchers and helping them interact directly with the public. So I kind of feel like outnumbered in this room. Do we got any other journalism folks here? We do use a fair amount of geography tools particularly environmental reporting. Always have. You know, imagery has been kind of a big thing for us. Let's see here. Okay, so some of it's like pretty basic stuff. So we also operate a nonprofit news service that covers the Great Lakes region. It's called Great Lakes Echo. Anybody here by any chance familiar with Great Lakes Echo? I would argue that we are the single largest creator of environmental news and information, original news and information. It's been up and going about 6-7 years now. And kind of the advantage is we get to do kind of weird and wacky things, kind of experimental journalism, see what might work. One of the things that we really like to do, because our community is defined by 8 states and 2 Canadian provinces, it's really, really big. And actually, it's not defined by 8 states and 2 provinces, it's defined by parts of 8 states and 2 provinces. So New York is definitely a Great Lakes state. New York City is hardly a Great Lakes city or community, and yet the stats that come out of New York are very difficult for us to manage because New York City skews so many of them. So the thing of it is, it's really hard to get far enough away to take a picture of our community unless, you know, you go on a satellite. So a lot of the things what we do is, are you folks probably familiar with NASA's Earth Observatory? And basically what we do is NASA sends out this weekly digest of, hey, here's cool stuff we took from space this week. What do you guys think? And we look through it and we look see if there's anything that we want to do. We want to create a story around that image. Okay, which is fine, all right, but it really makes us beholden to them. You know, we just sit there and pray, gosh, hope they have something to do with the Great Lakes. This is a piece that a student of mine did several years ago where they got some satellite imagery from University of Wisconsin, and it was of Lake Erie taken at the same spot every day for 30 days. And he put it together, and he made just this quick little animated GIF out of it. And what you're going to do is you're going to see spring breakup here. So the ice is going to break up. And then right after that, you can see the sediment swirling into Lake Erie. You wait just a minute; it'll recycle. It'll do it again. See the ice break up. See the sediments come in. This is like a marvelous visual for us because we put this in our library. We take it off the shelf, and every time I'm writing a story about algae blooms in Lake Erie, okay, or the need to regulate farm practices, we pull that off the shelf and say, this is what we're talking about. So in August, when we get a nice satellite image of a great big algae bloom, we can also pull this one off and show our readers that. And it really kind of impacts them, and then it gets us another audience as well, because what we found when we started doing stuff like this, we got an audience that we didn't used to have, and I guess I would characterize that audience as satellite imagery nerds, you know, people who are really into satellite imagery. They don't care what's on there, you know, but they just really think it's cool. And all of a sudden we're talking to a new community about an environmental issue. Okay, so somebody help me here. How am I going to toggle back and forth to this? Where do I go back to my... I don't see it. You want to click here, maybe? Oh, so this is going to be a little awkward, isn't it? There, you want to be my technical support here, yeah.
So it looks like.
Okay, and what I want to do is just. Okay. Okay. All right. Good. That's good. Thanks. So the other nice thing about NASA is they do some kind of cool features like this one here. Okay, and they're talking about, they got the GRACE satellites up there and they measure density of the Earth's crust. Okay, and somebody got this brilliant idea after they sent satellites up is maybe we can measure groundwater resources because that would change the density of the Earth's crust. And so during drought, you know, we say, oh, the lakes are really getting smaller, the rivers are drying out. Well, there's also an impact on groundwater. Okay, so NASA put this thing together, and this is over time, and this just shows some groundwater drying up. Okay, and we looked at the state of Michigan and what was going on there, and we thought, oh, this is kind of tricky because, and you'll see in a minute, you know, half the state is red and half of it's blue or half of it's white. What the heck's going on here? You know, it's the same state. We're right here in the middle of the Great Lakes. There shouldn't be that kind of variation. So we called up the people at JPL and we said, hey, what's going on here? And they said, yeah, we think that might be wrong. And we said, so what do you mean it might be wrong? You're putting up data here that might be wrong? And yeah, well, we're fixing it when we figure stuff out here. But we think there's two things that's going on. I love this. This guy sitting in Oklahoma, he says to us, so sometimes the data is thrown off by proximity to large bodies of water. Is your state near any large bodies of water? And you think, good, if you looked at a map. But the other thing is, too, he says, what we think is going on there is something called isostatic rebound. And I said, oh, yeah, of course, all right. And maybe people in this room know what that is. But to me, it was news and it was really, really cool. You know, the glaciers are retreating, or the glaciers have retreated. They squished the ground so much that the ground is still rebounding from being squished so long ago. Okay. In my business, that's a hook. That's really cool. Is that not cool? Okay. You can build a story around something like that by discovering it this way. And then there's sometimes just real straight up stuff like this. Okay, you're talking about the weather, and we can get a nice snapshot of what the weather looks like in our state. Okay, and everybody likes to talk about the weather, and that gives us an excuse to talk about the polar vortex. Gives us an excuse to, I don't have an example of this up here, but what we did is we looked at ice cover, and we looked at ice cover of every single one of the Great Lakes. We had snapshots of it, and again, it gave us something to talk about. Okay, and then here's something a little closer to home, and probably people in this room know this. I hope they know this. Okay, at RS and GIS, they have a wonderful library of archived Michigan aerial images, and they're a wonderful thing for a journalist. I would assume they'd be a wonderful thing for a geographer as well, particularly when we're writing about sprawl. Okay, so yeah, we got Google Maps, and it's really, really cool, but what did it look like a long time ago? Guess what? Here at Michigan State University, we know, because we have this archive. Guess what? Because you're a student or faculty member, you get access to this free. Guess what? When you graduate, the price goes way up. Okay, so grab it now. All right, so here's an interesting story. I had a student asked, she wanted to write about this because it was her hometown. It's Gaylord. Okay, how has Gaylord grown? And Gaylord's an interesting community because not only did I-75 go next to it, there's two exits on I-75 into Gaylord, so it's kind of helps fuel that sprawl. So here's this image in 1938. Okay, and we write about it, we talk about it a little bit, and this is getting a little older, 1952. We still don't have any I-75, but all of a sudden, here's I-75. Look how Gaylord has grown. Look to the west of I-75, there's nothing going on there, okay? There really isn't much going on there until, oh, well, it's starting to grow a little bit here. Here's 1992. Okay, and then we're going to grow a little more. Okay, and if you ever go up there, there's like Kmart and Meijer and everything else is off with the west of the expressway. So all I'm saying here, and then here's a Google Map image, is all I'm saying here is that it's a wonderful tool for a journalist. Anytime we can have geography that we can visualize, just really brings that, that story home fairly quickly. How am I doing on time here? Oh, that's not good. All right, and here's a picture, kind of sprawl in reverse. This is a story about Detroit, and it was actually built around the idea of moving the 2,700-ton Gem Theater. Okay, old building they wanted to save in Detroit. This is where it was in 1937. You really can't see it, but that's where it is right there. Really what you want to do, though, is notice the density of housing and buildings, okay? And then you can watch as it begins to clean out. Again, there's the Gem Theater. We've begun to take down derelict buildings. This neighborhood is beginning to decay. And there you can see the Gem Theater all alone, you know, in one block, okay? Fairly dramatic impact, okay? And then they decided to move it, okay, when they built Comerica Park. So this is where the Gem Theater used to be. This is where they moved it, okay, the longest distance of the heaviest object ever for about 4 months, and the same moving company then broke their own record, okay. And again, here's a Google Map thing. I think what I'll do is rather than show you any more, though. There's some really good examples of this. Using those historic images, what we found a really good way of comparing stuff is this tool that you can put in like any kind of WordPress here. Okay, you've probably seen this. This is a slider tool. Okay, but this is what Lake Michigan shoreline looked like near Charlevoix. Okay, and this is what it looks like today after a cement plant was put in there. Okay, and so you can slide that back and forth and see that comparative thing. Huge communicative value for something like this. And it doesn't really have to only be with photo imagery. You can do it for, we did a story about this new map archive that came out. Okay, and so we grabbed this, I think this is Green Bay. Okay, you know, there's how Green Bay has grown over time. Okay, the thing that I would end with, if I could cheat just a little bit, is I think that there's a wonderful opportunity for us to get great information that scientists and researchers have in the lab and never sees the light of day, okay? And that's one of the things that we try to teach our journalists. Not only do we want you to learn how to do this stuff, but we want to you to learn about the cool stuff that other folks are doing. This is a straight up story about the pipeline that connects the Upper Peninsula and the Lower Peninsula. Maybe some of you have seen this. The University of Michigan did this modeling. What would happen if that pipeline broke? Okay, where would the oil go? Okay, and they modeled it and they animated it, and we got a hold of it. And every time we write about that pipeline, we run this imagery with it as well. It'll start up in just a minute. This is a break in the middle of the pipeline. As a journalist, you really want that pipeline to break to the northern end of the Straits Peninsula, because then you can see the oil wrap around real nicely around Mackinac Island. That's a heck of a story, isn't that? Oil spill on Mackinac Island. Okay, so we always cheer for the bad news. So this is over a period of time, and it shows the middle section, the upper section, and the lower section. Cool stuff like this goes on all the time that the public doesn't know about, but the public could certainly be aware of and could benefit from it. It's intriguing to me. I'm on the Environmental Science and Policy Program Advisory Board here, and we just approved a specialization in modeling. Okay, and I'm thinking, wow, this is really cool. We can just grab this modeling stuff and go with it as modeling specialization. And what they said, well, wait a minute, we do the modeling, but we don't do the animation. That's just like too extra. It's a whole new thing of coding for us to do, and we don't really need to do that. Well, we really need to do that. The journalists really need to do that, and I can see that there's a real great intersection there. You give us the data, let us animate it, and we can do really cool stuff for the public. I know I've gone too far, but I guess that'll be it.